What's going on, everybody? My name is Jake McGeorge. Today we're going to dive in, talk about how to do an oil change on either your Segway Villain, UT10, or UT10 Crew. All of these models have the same engine, so while the process may change slightly here or there, it's going to be the same overall. The tools you're going to need to get this accomplished is you're going to need, first off, a 19mm socket. You're going to need a 10mm socket. Then you're going to want to use either an 8mm Allen key or 8mm Allen socket. On top of that, you want to have a torque wrench for torquing things back to spec at the end. And then of course, you're going to need 3.5 quarts of oil and a new oil filter. So we've removed the driver's side rear wheel. You don't need to do this. We just did it for the sake of the video so you guys can see what we got going on. All right, so you've got your tools together. The first thing you're going to want to do is get under the vehicle and you want to remove the rear skid plate. You're going to need your 10mm socket for that. But we've got the skid plate removed. It's time to drain the oil from the engine. One thing that you need to remember with the Segway 1000cc engines is that there is 2 oil drain plugs. There's gonna be one located on the underside of the engine where the skid plate was, and the second one is gonna be located on the side of the engine case. The one on the side of the engine case is gonna take a 19mm socket. The one on the underside is gonna take your 8mm Allen key or Allen socket. All right, first one we're gonna remove is the oil drain plug on the side of the engine case with our 19mm socket. All right, so we've got the oil drain plug removed on the side of the engine case. Now we want to get under the engine case and remove the second oil drain plug. You're going to need either your 8mm Allen key or your 8mm Allen socket for this. So one good tip you want to watch out for is when you remove your oil drain plugs, you want to make sure that the O-ring came out with the plug. It could potentially be in the engine case still. It could have also fell off into the oil pan. If you don't have that O-ring, you can reach out to your nearest Segway dealer. They can get you that part. If your O-ring is in good condition, you can reuse it. We do recommend that you use a new O-ring every time you change your oil though. So once you've made sure that your O-rings are still intact, you want to make sure that you also remove your oil screen from the side of the engine case. This is going to allow the rest of the oil to drain more freely, and it's also going to allow you to double check and make sure that your oil screen is clean. All right, so we've got our oil drain plugs replaced. We've also got our oil screen replaced. Now you want to torque those down to 12 to 14 foot-pounds. All right, so we've got our skid plate back on. We've also got our oil drain plugs replaced. Last thing we want to do is replace our oil filter before we fill the engine back up with oil. This happens to be a brand new vehicle, so we're not going to worry about wasting an oil filter on that, but the oil filter location is going to be on the driver's side, just behind the rear shock tower. It's time to fill the engine back up with oil. On the Segway Villain, where you're going to find the oil fill tube is in the rear cargo area under the trap door. If you have a 2024 or older Segway Villain, you're going to want to remove the dry storage container. You'll find it under there. If you have a UT10 or UT10 Crew, you'll find the oil fill tube under the cargo bed. Depending on how good of a job you did draining the oil out of the engine, you're going to need to replace 3 to 3.5 quarts of oil. But the most reliable way to make sure that you've done that correctly is to check on the engine oil dipstick. We've got all of our oil replaced in the engine. We put about 3.2 quarts in there. It's very important to remember that in order to get an accurate reading on the oil dipstick, you need to start the motor and let it cycle for about 30 seconds to a minute. So we have just cycled the engine for 30 seconds to a minute. We double checked the oil level on the dipstick. It looks perfect. And that's the process, guys. So that's the oil change for the Segway Villain, the UT10, and the UT10 Crew. Now it's time to get out there and do some riding.